With us tonight, Tony McNulty, Home Office Minister, Boris Johnson, Conservative Higher Education spokesman, Shirley Williams for the Liberal Democrats, from the United States, the author and critic Christopher Hitchens, and his brother, the broadcaster and columnist for the Mail on Sunday, Peter Hitchens. So welcome to the programme. The panel, of course, don't know what's going to be put to them by the audience here, but just our first question is from Robin Horsley, please. Robin Horsley.
Is Salman Rushdie's knighthood an insult to Muslims worldwide?
Shirley Williams.
I think it was a mistake. I think that if it was, as it's said to be, a reward for lifelong literary endeavour, then all I can say is that I think the timing was very odd indeed. I want to say very clearly that I don't believe the Prime Minister had anything whatsoever to do with it. I think it came up from a departmental proposal, which is what usually happens with knighthoods, and a lot of the political sort of firestorm that started has been started quite incorrectly. Nevertheless, I think the Department of Culture and the media, which I think put his name forward, were not very wise to do it in that way. This is a man who has deeply offended Muslims in a very powerful way, who's been protected by the British police against threats of suicide for years and years, at great expense to the taxpayer. And frankly, I think that it was not wise and not very clever to give him a knighthood.
Christopher Hitchens.
I think that's a contemptible statement, and I think everyone who applauded it should be thoroughly ashamed of themselves. Do you think, really, that it's a waste of time and money defending free expression from suicide murderers? If you do, can you think of a better cause the money should go on? When I hear idle talk about how this country and this culture could or should punch above its weight, as we say, I think, well, what do we have that's better than our language? And isn't it extraordinary that we have an author who has helped spark a renaissance of writing in the subcontinent that's produced a whole new branch of English literature? They're written in our language, who knows it better than, I may say, some of our politicians appear to do. Tariq Ramadan, who you may have heard of, who's become something of a self-appointed spokesman for Islam in Western Europe, had the following to say the other day, a man with whom I've often disagreed. He said, "It is entirely up to the British who they nominate for an award." I hope you'll at least agree with that. Oh, you don't? All right. He went on to say something perhaps you don't know. He said the protests against it in Pakistan are purely a matter of violent, vicious internal politics there. It's part of a jostling for position. People who claim to be offended can by all means do so. It takes a lot to make me cry. But people who say, "I'm so offended, I'm going to start suicide bombing in my country," have to be told, no, that's an unpardonable interference in our internal affairs. And it shouldn't have been our High Commissioner who was called in by the Pakistani government to be lectured. We should have hauled in the envoy of Pakistan here and said, "Stop that right now, or do without all the aid we give you. Okay. Do without the protection and alliance that you've prospered from out of our kindness and generosity." Okay. We won't have talk of murder for the writing of novels. And I see that whatever I say, there's a sort of sullen, resentful, boring atmosphere in this room.
I don't think so.
Thank you.
If you stop, they might hear whether they... You have to stop in order to get the applause, Christopher. That's the thing.
No. Normally I'm just interrupted by storms.
Peter Hitchens.
Aren't we getting this a little bit out of proportion? Is an award of a knighthood by the British state a particularly major event? And are these demonstrations... I don't think it's very likely I'm going to get one, Boris. I'd say it doesn't seem to me to be... And I have to say, the whole array of honours available from the British state seem to me to be almost wholly devalued. And the only ones which we issue, which I still take seriously, are those which are awarded for gallantry and course.
All right, let's come to the question, which was, is the knighthood an insult to Muslims?
Of course it's not an insult. A knighthood is not an insult. And of course it is outrageous that anyone suggests that anyone should be killed for holding an opinion or offending a religion.
That's better.
I would... I just would add that there's another thing we have out of proportion here. If the cameras...
Shirley Williams forgot to say. I can't believe I'm sitting here.
Oh, don't be silly,
She
Christopher.
forgot to say
you
that.
You know perfectly well
No,
that
come
I
on,
wouldn't...
come
I
on,
would
you
not
turned your
support
guns- you turned your
suicide.
ire on Salman
I haven't.
Rushdie.
You distorted almost everything I said, and I never suggested and would never believe that people should be committed to being killed because of something they say or what their opinion
High
is.
time you said that.
Of course I don't believe
High time
that.
you said that,
I
madam.
would educate against that.
But you do think that it was wrong to offer him the
I
knighthood?
think I said very precisely that I thought the timing was unfortunate because it was a thing to be recognised as a lifelong contribution to literature, and I think, frankly, that Christopher has completely twisted what I said, and I resent that very much.
No, I mentioned what you didn't say.
I resent that very much.
Boris Johnson.
Well, I mean, in point of fact, I object to this knighthood on purely literary grounds. I have struggled. In the panel, David, I don't know how far you've got through one of Salman Rushdie's works, but they are more or less impenetrable. And I can think of plenty of great English authors, John le Carré, Martin Amis, why not, who wrote a great novel in the 1980s called Money, a fantastic book. Dick Francis, has he got a knighthood yet? He's got a far better grasp of pace, character, plot, in my view, than Rushdie, and he hasn't got a knighthood. I think I object on literary grounds, but I defend completely the decision of the Honours Committee, obviously fairly batty, but it's their right to do it, and I defend the honour completely against the charge of insensitivity. It's completely a matter for the Honours Committee. Obviously, they're very, very eccentric people. They gave an award to some pants merchant who sent it back in protest. It should not be a matter. We should not have our distribution of honours controlled by and affected by considerations of how it will go down amongst the mullahs in Tehran. That is completely wrong.
Yeah.
Okay? It's completely wrong.
The man in the centre there at the back.
I have read Midnight's Children, and it's a first-rate novel, in fact. And the Booker Prize judges agree with me, so I think he deserves a knighthood.
Oh, well, there you go. Good.
Midnight's Children.
I haven't got through it.
Tony McNulty.
Oh, sorry.
Hold on.
The last point is precisely where we should be arguing about this. I agree with Boris, but one way or the other, it's judgment on literary, whether the panel got on literary grounds, whether the panel got it right or not. I profoundly disagree with Shirley. This is not an insult to Muslims. It is not a mistake, and it is up, she's right, to various honours committees to do it. No, it doesn't come from the Cabinet or the Prime Minister. So if there's a debate to be had, let's have it on the relative merits of his literature and not on whether it offends. I find that as facile a debate as The Life of Brian, Jerry Springer, and all these other elements that go to, yes, maybe offending people. To be perfectly frank, anything, every time I watch television, I may well be offended by things, but I don't run out with a bomb strapped to me, and I don't run out to burn a book or go to burn the studio. We must get this in proportion.
Could I
Just one thing. If that's true, why did Margaret Beckett sort of apologise for it and say she hoped it hadn't upset people?
Well, she did the weasel thing of saying, I'm sorry if anyone is offended, which is a bit weasely.
But she's perfectly entitled to say if people are offended, then she's apologising for the offence. She's not apologising for the notion that something the Honours Committee has done was quite deliberately done to cause offence.
But now, the Midnight's Children did not just win the Booker, and Salman did not just later win the Booker of Bookers. Midnight's Children won the main literary award in Iran. People tend to forget. When the fatwa was issued against him by a senile, theocratic dictator who'd run his own country into beggary and bankruptcy and misery, every Arab and Muslim writer worth the name, from Najib Mahfouz, the Egyptian Nobel Prize winner, to Adonis, the great poet of the Palestinians, all signed and wrote in a book for Salman saying, we identify our cause with you and with your struggle for free expression in our culture. If you say that Muslims are being offended by this, and you lump them all together, you immediately grant that they are in fact represented by the most extreme, homicidal, fanatical, illiterate, intolerant people who not only haven't read this book, but couldn't read it.
Okay.
And that's an insult to Islam.
The woman in blue there, then I come